Hello everyone, welcome to Sunya IAS and welcome to this lecture. Today in this lecture we are going to study a very interesting concept, very risky concept, very dangerous concept and something that right now global economy is going through. You might have come across this term. It's called the doom loop. Now, have you heard of something called the doomsday? Doomsday is a day when the world is supposed to end, right? That's called doomsday. And doom loop is something of a similar sort. And doom loop is used in various terms. So there is a climate doom loop, there is an economic doom loop, there are different doom loops. Right now, we're talking about an economic doom loop. Doom loop is a situation wherein basically we are doomed and there is a loop of things going on which has made sure that our economy is doomed, which has made sure our climate is doomed, that we are now doomed. This is doom loop and this is going on in a loop. The concept is as simple as that. It can even be asked, for that matter, in your prelims examination. Okay, in your prelims examination, you might come across this term, that the word doom loop, the term doom loop is used in which context. Now, before we go into the concept, I need you to remember the concept of sovereign bonds. I need you to remember the concept of sovereign bonds. Now, what are sovereign bonds? Sovereign bonds, what does the word sovereign here mean? Sovereign means government. And the term sovereign bonds actually means the bonds that the government has created. You know, we often come across terms like T-bill, treasury bill, right? State development loans, etc. But we often don't know what these terms mean. Listen to me very carefully. The government wants to build infrastructure. Let's say it wants to build 5 schools, 4 or 5 schools. These are 5 schools that government wants to build. Now, government of course does not have this much money in its pocket. Let's say to build these schools, 5 schools, 500 crore is needed. Let's say these are big schools, 500 crore rupees are needed. Government does not have that kind of money to actually spend. Government cannot wait for the budget to actually sanction funds for the education ministry to create these schools, because budget comes once a year. So what will the government do? Government will issue bonds. Okay, so government will say, we are creating this school, you take our bond which is valid for 5 years for rupees 100. After 5 years, we will give you rupees 120 in return. For every 100 that you gave us, we will give you 120 in return. Okay, so plus 20 you will be getting per bond. This is sovereign bonds. Now just think, when will you buy this sovereign bond? As a consumer, let's say they are offering okayish sort of returns, you will only buy these bonds because they are not offering, either they would be Bitcoin, which are offering, you know, momentous returns somehow, but there is a lot of risk. You would only go for lesser returns if you have more security, right? If you are sure that within 5 years, these 5 schools will be completed anyhow. Okay? How will you be sure? When the government is performing well on its indicators. So, when the debt sustainability of the government is good, when the performance indicators of government is good, only then you will go for sovereign bonds. That is the truth. When a situation comes, when governments lose, when people lose faith in the governments, and that is why they don't go for the sovereign bonds, then it translates into a doom loop of overall economic fall. That is what happens. Okay. This is the concept that if the government will not get money, government will not be able to spend on welfare measures. Government will not be able to give subsidies. Government will not be able to give debt, the direct benefit transfers. Government will not be able to invest in social security indicators, right? When government will not be able to spend where it should, then people will not have money in their pockets. People will have to spend for everything from their pocket. They will not be able to spend money as it should be spent to increase the economy, and that creates a domino effect which we call a doom loop. And today we are going to talk about the European doom loop, because Europe is set to be in the middle of a doom loop right now, and specifically within Europe it is UK which is now not a part of the European Union, but overall a part, considered a part of the European continent. It is UK which is said to be at the helm of doom loop since the time it actually exited the European Union. And the Eurozone as a zone also is considered at the helm of doom loop. We'll talk about why. But for your UPSC examination, this is important for GS3. You will not get a question directly on what is a doom loop, how can a doom loop be avoided and all. No. But you will get a question on global economy. You will get a question on threats to Indian economy, and doom loop can be a threat to Indian economy as well. So when you write answers to this kind of a question, that what are the threats to Indian economy, the threat of going into a doom loop, just like Eurozone has gone into a doom loop, is one of the threats that faces our economy. Okay? Conceptual level pe, this can be asked in prelims as well. Conceptual level pe, it can be asked at prelims as well. And I want to make it very clear here that doom loop can be used for any series of events which push each other. Okay, so let's say for example, the interest rates of US Federal Reserve have increased a lot. Okay, US has increased the interest rates by 2 to 3% suddenly. All the Indian investors who have invested in Indian bonds in Indian government will flow to the US Federal Reserve, because US is considered a safer economy, and that might initiate a doom loop. So primarily doom loop is initiated only when governments lose legitimacy among the people and governments lose faith among the people that they will be able to deliver what they have promised to deliver. Okay. So look at this chart. When you look at this chart, you see where it starts from. So, yes, if you see, when doom loop starts, the banks which were investing earlier in government bonds, listen very carefully because it can get a little complicated. The banks which were investing more in the sovereign bonds earlier will start appearing weak. Why? Because the government itself is not reliable. So when the banks have invested heavily in these governments, then the government is not reliable, the government may not deliver. So the bank will lose legitimacy. So financial institutions look weak. Financial institutions start looking weak. Okay. Then economic or asset price growth slows. You understand that about 2 to 6% of inflation is healthy inflation. Okay. That's why our inflation targets are 4 plus minus 2. Right. So when the prices of things are not increasing even in a healthy manner, that means that no one is interested to purchase them. Fine. And economic or asset price growth will slow. So if a government, if a let's say business was earning, and if a let's say government business, any government business, let's say oil, even if in oil you do not have a healthy inflation, the oil company was earning, let's say, 1000 million dollars overall, and 10 years down the line it's again earning only this much money. There is no positive growth which has to be there. Fine. Then people run from weak financial institutions. People don't want to deposit their money from these in these institutions, and people also don't want to take loans from these institutions. Are you getting it? Then what happens, that financial institutions unload assets in a fire sale. They will try to give cheap loans at first, but when people are not really aware, people are not really okay with the kind of investments that the bank has made in the government bonds, then they will not invest or take loans, and then the financial institutions will be forced to sell off their assets. And it is like stopping of a machine. Okay, when a machine stops, it stops producing the products that it is supposed to produce. So as a bank is supposed to give loans, take deposits, give loans, take deposits. But if a bank is selling off its chairs, tables, ATM machines, all of these things, that means the machine has stopped, and there will be no economic growth from that system anymore. And that is a doom loop. Then asset prices decline further, banks lend less, and people spend less. Fine. And even here, people also go for a bank run. People also go for a bank run, which is whatever money is there in the bank, they would want to withdraw even that money also, because they are not sure the bank might shut off tomorrow. Fine. And overall, the result is the economic growth will slow. Now, this is something what is happening in the European Union, the Eurozone. It is happening in the Eurozone right now. So, these are the factors, as we just talked about. These are the factors of doom loop. You don't need to know them in a lot of detail. You just need to know them superficially, so that you know that if a question on economic slowdown comes, how are you able to utilize the concept of doom loop in your answer. So, the features and causes, it will of course lead to an economic slowdown, and doom loop can be a result of economic slowdown also. Just imagine a situation wherein after the COVID-19 crisis, just remember what mentality you were having or your parents were having during the COVID-19 crisis. Whatever money you had, you just wanted to save it, because you did not know whether your jobs were secure. You did not know whether when this lockdown will open. There was so much uncertainty that you did not spend on unnecessary things. Okay, you did not spend on things that could wait. Okay, so economic slowdown will result in a doom loop, and it will be a result of the doom loop also. So if at that point the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana would not have been launched, wherein people were given, the women-led houses were given 500 rupees per month to spend, then the flow of money in the country would have been reduced. That have been a problem. That would have been a problem. It also engages in volatility. You cannot predict. Institutions like RBI also, for that matter, will not be able to predict how the growth is going to go forward. Then there are international factors, like I just told you, that if for India, let's say, if US Federal Reserve increases its interest rates by a very large margin, then our investments will definitely go there, and within India it might start a doom loop. It will always be a chain reaction. It will not be the first thing to happen. But at one point of time, you will realize that no one is trusting the government's economic capacities. And that's why government is not getting money and government is not able to spend money also. Okay. Then government will have to go for bailout of banks. And this is the worst stage of it. Anyway, people are not giving money to the government through bonds. Anyway, people are not taking loans. And these banks, which have to give returns on deposits, which have to give salaries to their people, they are not getting any running money. So the government will have to bail out these banks. The government will have to bail out these banks, and that would be a problem. Then interest rates. It would impact the interest rates, and again it would be impacted by the interest rates as well. Declining value of banks bond portfolio, because if the banks have invested too much in the sovereign bonds, then their legitimacy will also decrease. Then it is cyclical. It's like boom and burst cycle, the boom cycle of business and the slowdown of the businesses that happen. And it's a vicious cycle, not viscous. It's a vicious cycle. It's very difficult to arrest a doom loop, because if you remember, for the past 5 years, we have been talking about the fact that Eurozone is in an economic crisis. Eurozone, why is it in economic crisis? Because it is in the middle of a doom loop. People have to pay very high rents. I'll give you an example. People have to pay very high rents. The real estate market is throbbing unnecessarily. There is not much development in real estate, but the rents are increasing. But the salaries are not increasing concurrently. Okay, that is the problem. So that's why Eurozone is more vulnerable to a doom loop. So there are some reasons to it. One is there is lack of power of European Central Bank. As you know, the European Union is a confederation. So these countries have come together to take some common decisions, but then overall they are various sovereign countries, right? They are not countries, they have not given up their sovereignty for the European Union, and that's why the European Central Bank will never have the kind of power that US Federal Reserve has or that the Reserve Bank of India has. Are you understanding? That is the problem that they don't have. And Eurozone, it has such small countries with such sparse populations also, that they don't enjoy the economy of scale benefit. And that's why countries like India are very important for the Eurozone. Then the government over there is in massive debt. Fine, the governments in Eurozone are in massive debt, and that is why, in fact, the Greek economic crisis happened. And this is called declining debt sustainability. You can use this term, declining debt sustainability. The debt sustainability decreases when the government's ability to service the debt decreases. You have taken 100 rupees of loan, you have to, after 10 years, you have to give it as 180 rupees back. You have to give it as 180 rupees back. Now, at the end of 10 years, or let's say at the end of 5 years, government doesn't even have 50 rupees to give back. Are you understanding? So, that is when the debt sustainability decreases. And in Europe, because economies have reached saturation point, you know, they say that right now we are in a situation of decline of the West and rise of the rest. Okay, so people's incomes have maxed out, people's rents are skyrocketing, people's lifestyle also has maxed out. There is nothing more to increase as such. They're already in a developed world, so they've reached the peak of development, they have reached the peak of growth. And that's why the most developed economies would always grow by just 1%, 2% only, not like Indian economy, which is right now growing at about 6%, 7% post COVID again, because they've already reached the peak. So But to reach that peak, government had taken a lot of loans, and government is not able to give that back. And these are lessons to be learned from the Eurozone, and that's why we are studying it in UPSC, because tomorrow by 2047, we are aiming to be a developed country. And the problems that these developed countries are facing, we need to be ready for that in advance. We need to learn lessons from them rather than making the same mistakes. Okay. Then again, another issue is that there is high exposure to corporates. When it comes to the sovereign debt also, in Europe, PPP is not an exception. Public-private partnership is not an exception. It is a norm. Governments collaborate with private companies all the time, and they service their debt in that manner. They create infrastructure with private companies together. So right now, more than 20% of European Union debt is with the corporate sector, and that is why, because the corporate sector is also facing a lot of flux, the startup culture and everything, and this will always remain there. But again, can we avoid a doom loop? Maybe not. Can we know how to handle a doom loop if it comes to that? Yes. If tomorrow these developed countries, they increase their interest rates and our investors start going out and out, we can't stop them. But can we figure out a way to bring them back? Yes. By increasing our reliability, by increasing our serviceability of debt. Okay. So these are some of the way forwards. As I said, we need to improve our debt serviceability. If government has taken a loan from you, it will give you back money with interest, should be the goal. Fine, should be the image. Then sometimes external intervention is also important. So when, as I said, when the companies are going out, the investors are going out, you need to have some sort of stimulus that you give, like the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. You just give money. It's also called helicopter money. And yes, it will lead to inflation, no doubt. But the fact that people are not spending at all will be arrested for a while by this helicopter money, wherein government is giving money to the people to spend. That is there. And reducing exposure to the foreign economies. Now, this is not to say that become deglobalized. Reducing exposure will also happen when we go towards globalization of rupee. Globalization of rupee or internationalization of rupee. We have already had a lecture on internationalization of rupee. You can watch that. But when we trade more and more in rupee rather than trading in, let's say, dollars, we are in a safer position because the printing of the currency, the value determination of the currency is in our hands, right? And I also want to add over here that these points, whichever I'm writing, you need to write these points if you are not having the Sunya books, because the notes to these are there in the Sunya IAS GS books itself. But if you are not having that book, and if you're not planning to order that book as well, you need to make notes. Okay, that is there. So overall, the conclusion is that for every economy at one point of time, doom loop can be inevitable. There will be a point when people will stop spending. There will be a point when people will have fatigue with spending money. They would not want to spend money. Just imagine a situation, everyone has a car, a house, a good lifestyle, everything. Where will you spend? right? When your basic needs are met, where will you spend? You will spend on holidays, you will spend on maybe better education, better everything, that is there. But doom loop is inevitable. The fact that Europe is more susceptible to doom loop does not mean that it is a fragile economy. What it means is that it has reached the peak of development, peak of uh, economic growth, and now there is saturation. So for India, the lessons are that when we reach the peak of our growth, how will we open up new avenues? How will the government make sure that it is being reliable, that it is being trusted upon by the people to give in their money? Clear? So that is all for doom loop. Again, I'm saying that notes are in the GS books, and if you don't have them, if you're not planning to order them, you can simply make class notes from these class. And I hope you benefited from this lecture. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.